why are we all talking about this need for an easier way to develop applications? It's mainly because on the one hand side, we all know in this digital area or era that we are in, we have on the one hand side the IT departments heavily overloaded with managing existing applications, maintaining applications, and also, of course, having to deal with all these legacy applications. On the other side, we have the business departments. They are very busy asking for changes, for new applications, to extend applications, to adapt applications. And that is, of course, as you know from your own experience, a big struggle for resources. So it's something like a tug of war where everyone is trying to get the best out of these limited resources. We cannot continuously rely on more resources in IT departments, and that's what the whole topic of citizen development is about. You have most likely heard about that term that is for quite a while in the community discussed. What does citizen development mean? In our situation here, it encourages non-IT trained people in the business department. They are really experts to use low-code and low-code design tools to create their own applications or deliver them to others. That's a definition coming from Gartner. And what we do since many, many years, as you know, is exactly going into that direction. We are having our business designer supporting capture definitions, supporting document definitions, supporting process definitions, or more flexible definitions. And in the end, we also have our automated document factory that can be completely done by operator type of knowledgeable person to define processes. That's real the empowerment of the business people. And if you do that, you have an impact. You really impact your whole application design environment because 40% of your current business people, according again to this Gartner study, which is a very recent one, are ready to support you in defining new applications. And that will speed up the number of applications that you can create because you suddenly have up to 4 times more developers available, citizen type of developers, than you have as professional developers. And that will, of course, in the coming years, help you to excel beyond the number of applications that you can define in such a low-code, no-code environment. When you define cases in adaptive case management, you think about goals. That's the outcome somehow that you want to reach. So that's the goal orientation. You can, of course, constrain with certain rules that a certain goal can only be reached if something else was reached. And then you define which tasks or which process fragments you need to reach these goals. And in the end, the usage that you see here by the business clerks, by the supervisors, managers, they just use these templates that were defined with our business design tools and execute them for specific use cases. So how does it all match together with Papyrus Converse? What we have been told now by Sabrina and Alex, we have not really reinvented anything. It's about the conversational user interface, but mainly we have enhanced the adaptive case management methodology with this business architecture. And business architecture gives you a much closer definition and modeling environment than without that, because we replace now the term case by value stream. That is exactly what people in the business era are talking about. We introduce this business terminology. The more technical term is ontology, but don't get in panic. That is a supportive mechanism to define exactly the terms that your business is talking about in this context. We replace the goals by the stages, which have to fulfill certain goals. So the goal orientation is now embedded in the stages of a value stream. And then the tasks and the processes are replaced by actions, which, if needed, can call services. So that's where you again get certain predefined processes in if needed, and they're always constrained by rules if there is a certain compliance regulatory needed. On the usage side, we have also seen with Papyrus Converse, we have the Converse client, which is using these predefined value stream templates to execute them for very specific customer cases. Yeah, I think the whole thing about the terminology is where does the business really benefit from defining such an information model based on business architecture? And if you just also use a simple example that you have to define a customer, that's what business people are talking about. They define, for instance, what the customer has as an important property. It has a name, the customer has an address, and then, for instance, they want a service request being placed by that customer. The service request also has certain properties, like a request ID or a description, whatever else. That triggers, for instance, then a certain working order. Again, the working order has certain properties like where do you have to work, when do you have to start, and of course, whether this work was approved or not. So you also define the approval status as part of your business terminology. And in the end, you need to assign a service team, and then each service team has to have a couple of employees working at that site. So that's a simplistic, but I think still very realistic scenario of defining an information model in business language. And how does that help now the business people? First of all, they exactly described what they are dealing with, what are the entities. So that is also what under the hood has then to be available as an object, as a database entity. But now you can define rules. And for instance, if you now want to design a rule which assigns a service team, you just really follow the path that is predefined by the ontology and say that to assign a service team, the working order must have a field start date. So you don't have to reinvent something. The system will also help you, as we have seen also with templates, to define these rules in a very still formal but natural language using business terms. And that is all supported now by our business designers. The business expert, which is a business analyst, it's a person, for instance, even a consultant knowing about that business, uses our designers, defines all these entities that we just have heard, goals, tasks, the rules, of course, in a library, in a reusable library, and from there, you now compose your business applications. And with business applications, we really talk about anything that you can think about that needs this type of collaboration. This can be an onboarding application. This can be, for instance, a contract management application, which has a lot of interactions between different people until the contract was really agreed upon and signed off. In the end, probably even signed and blockchain secured in the system. And then you, of course, have always this interface to existent applications needed, to existing systems, and we also have all these adapters, as you know, to connect, for instance, to SharePoint, Guidewire, SAP, Salesforce, whatever. And the persons that you now see here involved, business experts, IT department to define these data interfaces, they can easily collaborate now in a type of fusion team. That means they're really everyone contributing exactly the skills and knowledge that are needed to succeed with this application definition. But the majority of things, once, for instance, this interface layer was defined, can be exclusively handled by the business teams as business experts. That's the low-code, no-code integration platform. And just to give you a few ideas how this business designer looks like, here you have, for instance, your cases, and if there is a case with a predefined process, you already spot that process in the preview window as soon as you go through the list of available case templates. These are all templates. So here we are seeing, for instance, certain goal templates. Goal templates means that you compose a new value stream from these entities, reusing them, and if the goal, for instance, changes, it automatically changes all value streams that are using it. You define the participants, and even participants contributing to that collaboration between different departments can be defined in a hierarchical structure. That is your organization structure that you can define here. For instance, you have certain departments, and departments have certain teams, and teams, of course, have employees. And then forms, which you can then fill as a clerk, either on a website or on a mobile device. Even the forms are reusable components. where you select from your form selection form library. And on the right-hand side, you also see already a preview of the entities that people have to enter. So in the end, what do we achieve with that approach? We really have now an orchestration layer on top. On the left-hand side, you have your inbound channels. That means that's where you're communicating with your customers. On the right-hand side, you have your outbound channels. That's where you're sending information to. And with adaptive case management as a methodology, using Papyrus Converse, for instance, as an implementation, you just really orchestrate the necessary elements. If you need to capture, you use Papyrus Capture for incoming and the data extraction classification approach. You need documents to send out. That's the business document design solution. And in the end, with our automated document factory, you drive your processes into the various output channels. On the lower level, we have our adapters and interfaces. And now what happens? You, for instance, receive an email, as we have seen, you classify it, you create a new case. This new case, in the end, could be a converse value stream, is being executed. At some point, it needs a correspondence element, which is then sent through the automated document factory in another stage through, again, for instance, an email output channel. So that's really an orchestration approach which simplifies your definitions. And that is for a realistic scenario that someone logs in, for instance, on a website and fills out a predefined wizard-like user guidance form application. And once you have entered all your data, you start a new case, a new value stream, which is then used for the back-end collaboration. And they are supported by the user-trained agent, again, as an intelligence component fully integrated into the platform, where the users learn from previous activities. That's also knowledge sharing, very important, so that you don't have to educate people, you just let them work. And as they are experts in their work, they train in this way the system and will help others to succeed, reaching their goals in the same way. And that, of course, also has a big optimization potential. If you see that certain steps were always done in a certain way, that could also already then reflect back on the template and have something predefined already. So how do you get started? I think it's important to understand a little bit more where you in your organization can really start to apply this methodology. The first thing is think about the empowerment. And most likely you know yourself every day we have shortages on resources. So think who in your organization and which type of applications could be a starting point where really the business designer is the design tool, the low-code, no-code design tool to help defining their own applications to the business. The second thing you need to think about is the collaboration aspect. Things that can be automated because they are not really heavily linking people. They, of course, should still remain in certain process fragments. But the collaboration aspect, where you have to negotiate things, negotiate certain activities, that I think is the second part as a pillar where you can identify where do you have the most collaboration requirements, and that's most likely also linking then to where do I need to communicate with other systems. We have the integration with existing core systems where you also probably want to either retire certain applications because they're really considered legacy, and then you would create a new application with Papyrus adaptive case management methodologies, or you really interface with them because they are still needed and own data that will then be further used in the value stream execution. And the last thing is you definitely need to look where do you really govern your applications or where not. That means, do you really know how long certain things take? Do you reach certain service level agreements or not? So all of that is metadata in the Papyrus system. You know exactly how long someone was working on it or how the whole workflow was running. So you have all these items available to help you succeeding defining a more efficient approach.